I just want to tip my hat to Judy and Joanne and Kelly. I don't know where you went, Kelly. Kelly and Lisa and Tish, thank you. I've never seen an induction ceremony like that. It was awfully nice. And you know how to attract a crowd, so well done. Thank you. One more hand for you guys. So thank all of you for being here. I thought I had an hour to speak. I don't think I do. So I'm going to condense what I was going to say. I'll talk really fast because I want to save some time for questions. But as she said, I'm an Arizona native. I was born and raised in Mesa, Arizona. Back when I was born, there were 34,000 people in Mesa. There's now over 500,000. So it's grown quite a bit. I grew up working for my father in his pharmacy, so I learned very young the value of a dollar. In fact, I like to joke and say that I actually learned what the value of a quarter, because that was my starting pay. And I often joke that I'm going to write a book about my parents, child abuse or child labor. They would definitely be thrown in jail today. If I was a 5-year-old and they put me to work. Anyway, I learned a lot. I learned the value of hard work. I watched my father, a small business owner, having to make ends meet. Anyway, when I graduated, I went over to ASU, ended up student body president at ASU. So I learned a lot. That then catapulted me to my first job out of college, and it was working for Ronald Reagan at the White House. It was my first job, and as you can imagine, it was an honor of a lifetime to be able to work for my political idol, Ronald Reagan. From there, I went and I worked for 2 governors, Governor Kay Orr in Nebraska, who was the first female Republican governor of America, and then I came back home to Arizona and worked for Governor Fife Symington. And I am very proud now to be able to say that my campaign co-chairs for my campaign for governor are Governor Fife Symington and Governor Jan Brewer. And Jan has known me since I was about this tall, and she reminds me daily that if I get out of line, she knows where I live, and she will make sure that she keeps me on the straight and narrow. But importantly, when I left Governor Symington's office, I went to law school and embarked on almost a 30-year career. I keep saying it's 30 years, it's really only 28 years, but a long time in the private sector. And I spent 28 years on the other side of government, primarily working at the local level, in the land use arena, so it was primarily mayors and councils that I interacted with, but I also had experience working at the state level and the federal level. In fact, for 10 years, I split my time between Arizona cases and California cases. And in California, it's a very different ballgame. Any of you here? I know there's some people here from California. California refugees.
Escapees.
So I learned in California, there's 2 attributes of property ownership. 1, you get to pay taxes, and 2, you get to do whatever the environmentalists tell you can do. It's a very sophisticated game. They have tons and tons of money where they can hire every consultant and every lawyer and lobbyist, and they play the game in Washington, D.C. at the Department of Interior, the Corps of Engineers, the EPA, and every time I had to go back there, I came home a little more depressed. That Washington is broken. It is irretrievably broken. Americans should not have to hire teams of lawyers and consultants to get a permit out of the federal government. So then, along the way, I was raising 4 kids, and thank God I've got 4 amazing kids. And for many years, I was a single mom, so I learned what it means to struggle and get up every day and just go, because you have no choice. You have to. I also, along the way, was appointed to many boards, and you heard from my bio, I've been very active in a number of things, from philanthropy to schools. I was appointed to my kids' school board 18 years ago, and we grew that school. We went from 1 school to 17 schools before I left the board. They now have almost 30 schools, and they're growing now around the country, because we're doing some really good things here in education. We got a long way to go, but that experience gave me a lot of perspective, what's good, what's bad about our K-12 education system. I also served on the Arizona Board of Regents, and I can tell you we've got some good things going on, but we got a lot of work to do. And I can take a whole hour or more telling you about some of the challenges that we have and that I had to battle during my time there. So I figure as governor, I'll have a lot more say over what goes on in our universities. So I'm very proud of all those boards and commissions I served on. Lisa mentioned the Joe Foss Institute. Do any of you know the Joe Foss Institute? Joe Foss was World War II fighter ace. He then became the youngest, came back from the war, and became the youngest governor of South Dakota.
Right.
And then he was the American League Commissioner and conceived of the Super Bowl. So when he retired, he moved to Arizona and started the Joe Foss Institute. Anyway, I ended up being the chairwoman of the Joe Foss Institute. And we created this initiative, the Civics Education Initiative. Arizona was the first to pass it, and it was actually the first piece of legislation that Governor Ducey signed that requires all high school seniors to take the same test that immigrants to our country have to take to become citizens. And that, you know, if you're not testing it, the teachers don't normally teach it because they normally don't have time to teach it. So we wanted to make sure that it was a requirement, that before you graduated from Arizona High School, you could pass that test. After we passed it in Arizona, we took our show on the road. It's now a requirement in 33 states in America. I think there's about 3 million kids that take that test each year, but I tell you what, that is only the beginning. That test is a pretty simple test. And somewhere along the line, we've not only failed to teach our kids about America and the greatness of America, but we're now teaching them how to hate America and how to hate each other. And if there was a silver lining to COVID, it's because parents woke up and realized that. You know, so many of us dropped our kids off at school and we thought that they were learning to love their country and learning about our history, good, bad, and, you know, all parts of our history. And yet that's not what they're being taught anymore. So I want to take full advantage of the fact that parents have woken up, and we're going to change our education system in Arizona from a system that's built for the adults to a system that's built for kids, where the money follows the kids, and when money makes it into the pockets of the teachers and not the bureaucrats. So I am a fiscal and constitutional conservative. First Amendment, I'm an ardent supporter of the First Amendment, and I have a record to show that. When I served on the Board of Regents, the First Amendment was one of my top priorities. And after serving 2 years on the board, I was recognized nationally for my work in the First Amendment and freedom of speech. But it's also about religious liberty. That's why it's the First Amendment. John Adams, I love to quote John Adams. He said that our Constitution was written for a moral and religious people, and is wholly inadequate for the governance of any other. So if we look at a lot of the problems we have in America today, it's because we've forgotten about God. So it's imperative that we get back to basics. Second Amendment goes without saying. I come from a family of hunters. I'm a very good hunter myself. I do have at home what we call a collection. They call it an arsenal. And I am, you know, very happy we can defend our family. But let's not forget that the Second Amendment wasn't put there for deer hunters. That's right. It was there to defend us against the tyranny of government. Right to life, very important to me. The Fifth Amendment, many people don't focus on it, but as a lawyer, it's been something that is, I'm a recovering lawyer, I should say. It's something near and dear to me. It's due process and private property. You know, the ability as Americans, the ability to own the fruit of your physical and intellectual labor and pass it on to your kids, that's what's created so much in America. And then the 10th Amendment, federalism. Does anybody know the 10th Amendment? It's about 1 sentence long.
Yeah. States of the people.
At the end of the day, one thing we've forgotten as Americans is the federal government didn't create the states. The states created the federal government. It's like a wrestling match. We got, you know, we turned it upside down and we got us pinned down. And so, you know, I had people encouraging me to run for the United States Senate, and I just decided I'm not going to go back there 2 to 3 days a week to be a customer service provider and not being able to accomplish anything. If COVID taught us anything else, it's the governors who matter. It's the governors that will protect and save this country. And we're gonna have to come together. We have 36 governor's offices open or up for re-election or election this year. And I can tell you the left is coming after us. In the 2020 election cycle, I chaired the Republican Legislative Victory Fund at the request of the Speaker of the House and the Senate President. And I can tell you the money that came in from out of state, you know, after agreeing to accept this assignment, you know, and then realizing what I took on. When millions, and Michael Bloomberg, one day I wake up and to the news that Michael Bloomberg put another $4 million into Arizona legislative races. So against all